What's Tom Johnson? He was for Star Ledger environmental reporter. And
Test.
New Jersey Spotlight. Hey, Marty. Hey, my new game. Cool. Yeah. I tried the first one. I never finished this one. I enjoy it.
Before commencing the public testimony portion of our hearing, I would ask that all of the members of the Clean Water Council who are in attendance to please stand. As I mentioned earlier, come on kids, up, up, up. As I mentioned earlier, we have 17 members of the council, 7 of whom represent state agencies, including Anthony Valente from the Departments of Labor and Industry, Jim Requay from the Department of Community Affairs, Stan Catch, NJDEP, Ferdows Ali from the Department of Agriculture, Ella Filippone from the Water Policy and Supply Council, and Jessica Sanchez from the Delaware River Basin Commission. 6 of our members are nominated by the following organizations: Russ Furnari from the New Jersey State Chamber of Commerce, George Bacon, the New Jersey Business and Industry Association, Lou Neely, the New Jersey League of Municipalities, Anthony McCracken, the New Jersey Association of Counties, and James Cosgrove, the New Jersey Society of Professional Engineers, who also serves as a vice chair of the council. Robert Breslin, the New Jersey AFL-CIO. We also have 4 citizens of the state representing the general public, of which I am one. Also in this category are Chris Sturm from the New Jersey Future, Amy Goldsmith from New Jersey Environmental Federation, and Dan Van Abs from Rutgers University. Dan also serves as a vice chair of the Clean Water Council. I wanted to mention this all to you because it expresses the diversity from a representational perspective on the council, and I think we serve the state well when we are able to come to consensus considering the diverse interests that in our day lives we represent. Thank you. With that, we will open this up to public testimony. Our first speaker is Nicholas Aselta, President of Aqua New Jersey.
Thank you and good morning. And first, before I start, and I'll be very brief, just answering some of DEP's questions here. I've been a BPU commissioner, an assembly member, a Senate member, and probably have dealt with 5 or 6 commissioners along the line of DEP, and I can tell you that Bob Martin is probably the most effective, knowledgeable, and has the best articulation of any commissioner I've seen in government, and I've been, I guess, in government 18 to 20 years. So even though he's not here, he knows how I feel. I think it's moved the agency light years away, further than where it was before. So congratulations on him and his team. And the Water Council, thank you for being volunteers in what you do. We know how important your job is. We know that it's a volunteer basis, and we know that the time and effort that you put in is helping the not only the state of New Jersey, but every citizen, every man, child, and person in this particular state. So thank you again for your volunteer work. As you know, I am the president of Aqua Water, and we appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony here. I provided the members at the dais here of our testimony. The water utility facilities provide a vital and critical infrastructure that supports residents, businesses, and organizations throughout New Jersey. Water is essential for health, sanitation, fire safety, and economic growth. According to the American Water Works Association report, Buried No Longer, the cost of repairing and expanding U.S. drinking water infrastructure will top $1 trillion in the next 25 years. According to the EPA estimate, the nation's drinking water utilities need $335 billion in infrastructure investments over the next 20 years for thousands of miles of pipes, as well as thousands of miles of treatment plants, storage facilities, and other key assets, according to the New Jersey State Development and Redevelopment Plan. Including in that is New Jersey's needs, and as we've heard and saw before, it's somewhere around $18 billion. So you can understand how important a conference like this is in the wake of Sandy, in the wake of some of the federal money and state money that's going to be provided. We believe private industry needs to play a real strong partnership here. I wanted to just address some of the questions that we were asked to address. The first question, what are the major issues that need to be addressed to improve water infrastructure resiliency? Our opinion, Aqua New Jersey, adequate funding and financing are needed to support sustainable infrastructure management and renewal through customer water rates and structural rate surcharges. I think the Assistant Commissioner mentioned that the educational process is so important. People need to understand that what's underground needs to be replaced, and they need to somehow come to grips with helping to help offset the revenue costs there. I would like to thank the BPU for addressing major infrastructure improvements for the first time through the approval of the Distribution System Improvement Charge, or DSIC. DSIC is the first major regulatory policy change in 14 years that addresses the infrastructure issue. The New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection should require greater emphasis on effective utility management practices related to the award of SRF funds for capital improvement projects. Bad behavior and bad practices should not be rewarded with low or no cost funding to provide short-term solutions. Regulators should take a harder line to limit the transfer of utility revenues. I think a gentleman out here mentioned that earlier. Limits should be placed on the transfer of utility revenues to non-utility municipal funds and programs. Superstorm Sandy has taught us in the last year the critical need for increased infrastructure investment in all of our utilities, not just water. Next question. How can DEP, BPU, DCA best encourage improved resiliency? Any infrastructure improvements should include a full analysis of its past, present, and future potential vulnerabilities. Stop building infrastructure with short-term focus and build for long-term durability and growth. Next question, how can DEP facilitate resource sharing between utilities and local governments before, during, and after significant events? In the same spirit as the legislative initiatives to encourage municipal consolidation, we too believe in the consolidation of water and wastewater systems for the purpose of achieving greater efficiencies. I mentioned that in my remarks to the Assistant Commissioner. There are 600 plus private water companies, 300 municipal water companies. They need to be consolidated at some point in time. The sooner the better. We also must encourage the use of WARN, the New Jersey Water Agency Response Network. Next question, how can DEP best encourage collaborative efforts between local governments? Although the DEP has made great strides, it should continue to improve its own responsiveness and continue to streamline the permit review and approval process. DEP takes a broad view, whereas municipal governments and water infrastructure owners are more on the short-term focused. What technical assistance can DEP provide to support long-term sustainability? Educating the decision makers, political and municipal officials, and technical staff on the principles and benefits of effective utility management is required in order to gain full community support for proper rates. The Assistant Commissioner mentioned it. Education is so important to the ratepayer, the consumer, as to what their dollars are going for. Finally, what requirements should be placed on grants and loans for utility rebuilding efforts? Any entity receiving EIT funding must be sustainable and viable, must include effective utility management, and already have or should include a rate adjustment to achieve full cost pricing. With that testimony, I thank all of you for coming today and understanding how important this issue is, and I thank the Water Council for their particular participation. Thank you again.
Thank you. I apologize. I forgot one important housekeeping measure. Testimony, as noted in our notice of the meeting, is of 5 minutes, and to the extent that you begin to run over, Chris Sturm, who's sitting in the front row, will be holding up a sign so that when you see the 1 minute sign, take that as a note that you should begin the process. You've got 1 minute to do the wrap up as a courtesy to the others who hope to speak today. The next person who was asked to speak is Ronald Anastasio, Assistant Executive Director, Somerset Raritan Valley. Is he here? Oh, okay, great. Ann Berman. Now I hope I get this right. Dennis Simonecki?
Correct.
Thank you.
Close enough. I've been practicing for years.
So Chair Goodwin and Clean Water Council members, thank you for the opportunity. Good morning. My name is Dennis Simonecki, and on behalf of the leadership of the New Jersey section of the American Water Works Association, I thank you as its section chair for an opportunity to contribute to this public hearing, sponsored, of course, by the Council. AWWA New Jersey has 1,750 members who are united in the mission of providing New Jersey residents with safe drinking water. Most of New Jersey's major utilities, both public and investor-owned, are active section members, along with engineering and environmental professionals, as well as allied industry professionals. AWWA New Jersey is indeed dedicated to the promotion of public health, safety, and welfare through the reliable provision of drinking water of unquestionable quality. AWWA, our parent organization, is the oldest and the largest education and scientific association for drinking water professionals. Founded in 1881, the association is now more than 50,000 members. AWWA includes public drinking water departments and authorities, private companies, and individuals engaged in providing drinking water to the American people. Recent storms such as Tropical Storm Irene and Superstorm Sandy have indeed devastating impacts on water and wastewater infrastructure in New Jersey. These events strain the ability of utilities, both large and small, to maintain continuous service to its customers during the event and in the recovery phase. It is imperative that affected utilities must incorporate long-term infrastructure resiliency into their planning, design, and construction efforts to mitigate the impacts from future natural disasters. These efforts must start now and must include flood protection and the rebuilding phase. Flood protection in the rebuilding phase. While it is recognized that the replacement of infrastructure destroyed by the recent storms will receive top priority, it is also recognized that appropriate levels of redundancy should and must be incorporated in all water and wastewater utility capital asset plans. The engineering standards used in the industry to define the appropriate levels of redundancy are well known. DEP, DCA, and BPU should strongly encourage all utilities within their respective jurisdictions to develop long-range capital improvement plans that incorporate sustainable financing and rate-setting strategies. It is essential to ensure that a system's rates and revenues support the full cost of both capital improvements and ongoing operations. In addition, all three regulatory agencies should strongly encourage utilities that do not have current and updated emergency response plans to quickly develop and/or update those plans. DCA should focus also on its review of municipal water and wastewater budgets relative to the diversion of revenues and reserve funds intended for water and sewer improvements, moving off to other municipal functions. Ratepayer dollars collected to improve and renew water and sewer infrastructure should not be reallocated through the budgeting process to activities unrelated to these utility services. DEP and DCA must also assure that the regulatory approval process is streamlined to minimize any delays in the rebuilding process. These regulatory delays can allow damaged utility assets to degrade further, which may lead to further interruptions in service. Water and wastewater utility services must remain functional at all times in order to ensure the protection of public health, safety, and the environment. Unfortunately, the power grids serving the state are often severely damaged by natural disasters like Irene and Sandy. Extended power outages have immediate and severe impacts on water and wastewater utilities. Therefore, backup power supplies are critical to utility operations. Diesel and natural gas fueled electrical generators are typically utilized by utilities in the emergency power operation mode. However, when the availability and delivery of diesel or natural gas is limited, alternate procurement and delivery systems must be considered. DEP is commended for their efforts in assisting procurement and delivery of fuel during Superstorm Sandy. DEP and DCA must assist utilities in the investigation and the development of alternate fuel sources, procurement methods, and delivery systems. On behalf of the AWWA, I thank you for the opportunity to deliver those comments. Thank you very much.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Is Sandra Cohen here from NJDEP? Michael DeFrancisci, PVSC? Dennis Dahl? Jamie Ewalt? Paul Ferrero? Peggy Gallows? Terrific. Thank you, Peggy.
Good morning, everyone, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. My name is Peggy Gallows. I'm the Executive Director of the Association of Environmental Authorities of New Jersey. We are a trade association that represent 90 water and wastewater solid waste recycling systems owned by the public, as well as 75 private sector businesses that support them. We're grateful for this opportunity to comment today. AEA members learned a lot from Sandy. First, we learned about the caliber of the people who work in and with the publicly owned water, wastewater utilities of New Jersey. They are smart and dedicated problem solvers. We also saw dedication and concern among the people of the DEP who worked very hard to get our members the resources that they needed. Sandy also confirmed what we already knew, which was that well-managed and up-to-date systems stand a better chance against storms. I just wanted to skip some information about damage that I had that I think has been well spoken today. I wanted to talk about a few of the adaptations and the innovations that I think helped get through Sandy. Plants like Rahway Village Sewage Authority and joint meeting of Essex and Union remained in operations and released no untreated effluent, mainly because of their on-site cogeneration facilities. It's also important to note that dedicated personnel risked their own safety to stay in at plants even as floodwaters rose, and they had to take to roofs and lofts to stay safe. And they set up generators, scavenged for fuel, and undertook repairs at the earliest moments. In many instances, planning preparation and an innovative design done ahead of time meant damage was not as severe as it might have been. The Hoboken H1 wet weather pump station, which was put into service in 2011, is in the hardest hit part of Hoboken, and it remained operating. Its pump and screening chamber are below grade, and the electrical generator and logic controller communicate with the treatment plant. Because of that well-designed pump station, flooding was eased 48 hours sooner than it might otherwise have been. The South Monmouth Regional Sewage Authority Seagirt pump station was one of only 3 of its pump stations undamaged. Its primary electrical equipment and controls are housed in an elevated mobile enclosure adjacent to the wet well and dry well. An expendable portable generator and transfer switch kept its pumps going, and a secondary sacrificial electrical and control system operated the pumps. SMERSA operations staff were able to move the mobile unit, the guts of the pump station, so to speak, out of harm's way before the storm. 5 Rahway Valley Sewage Authority staff members staved off disaster by performing a modified black start on the cogen system. Initially, Rahway Valley was able to operate its cogen system, as I mentioned. After several days, however, our large process air blower tripped a circuit and caused the cogen to fail. RVSA switched to two 2.2 megawatt diesel generators, but 36 hours later, those generators started to fail too. The modified black start fooled the cogen system into kick-starting, something which it wasn't designed to do, and that kept the plant running in island mode for almost 2 weeks. We offer these examples for context. While many things did go wrong, many things also went right. With regard to the questions asked by the Council, we offer the following specific comments. Lack of data was a significant problem, and that has also been mentioned. I think that states should consider developing a system whereby critical contact and logistical information is confirmed prior to some threatened event or storm, or as soon thereafter as possible. Confirmation of cell phone numbers, personal cell phone numbers, ancillary facilities such as pump station, meter numbers, and account numbers associated with power supply should all be confirmed on an event basis. It was troubling that the wastewater sector was not considered by the ROC as a critical sector until DEP leadership intervened. This is immediately after the storm, and it is encouraging that since Sandy, OHSP has become very aware of wastewater and is making efforts to include more wastewater in its planning. Many treatment plants that did not suffer damage but lost power were operating on standby generators on the verge of having to shut down because of lack of fuel and threatened to discharge raw sewage. The New Jersey DEP should move ahead expeditiously with its asset management pilot so that it can collect data, and we're very happy to hear that asset management has become such an important part of the response to Sandy today. 2 AEA member organizations were to have been part of the pilot, and they stand ready to move forward, and AEA and other groups are willing to partner with DEP to make that pilot happen. The state needs to continue to facilitate the creation of a better Plan B for sludge disposal. New Jersey did manage to take care of its own sludge despite the fact that PVSC was disabled. This is because wastewater providers quickly sized up the problem after the storm, and wastewater facilities that were not severely damaged, such as Somerset Raritan Valley Sewage Authority, Stony Brook, Mount Holly, and 2 bridges, they all provided backup and took the sludge. A number of good options that have been suggested so far should be fully examined. They include allowing solid waste incinerators to take sludge under certain circumstances, permitting landfills with liners at leachate control systems to accept sludge in emergencies, allowing for temporary open-air sludge storage at plants that have room, creating a standing list of provider of mobile sludge treatment units that could be drawn on in an emergency. Related issues include revising diesel fuel storage limits to allow spare fuel storage capacity, exploring new technologies and systems for treatment, such as some of the technology I just talked about, and finding ways to keep existing incinerators in operation despite looming tougher federal emissions standards. There's broad agreement that detailed sludge management backup plans would make sense, but that a one-size-fits-all would not. We are all aware of the problems encountered with a county-based approach to solid waste planning. And then just one more point regarding asset management. We urge the CWC to continue to press for removal of disincentives to proper infrastructure management, such as allowing municipalities to plug holes by requesting funds collected to maintain water and wastewater systems. And just this caution with regard to dissolving utilities authorities, certainly communities have the right and should determine their own futures. But dissolution of some utilities authorities is not necessarily being done to improve the way the water infrastructure is managed. It allows money to be diverted from the water and wastewater infrastructure. And so that's an important part of the conversation that several speakers have called upon to have. I have more, but I think I'll stop here. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today, and I look forward to working with you.
We appreciate it, and we appreciate your written testimony. We certainly will consider it thoroughly. Thank you. Jim Glozzi has indicated he would submit written comments. Is he here? Okay. Rich Harding. Dennis Hogan. Trevin Hauser. Not speaking? Okay. Lee Jones. William Kibler. Andrew Krinkin. Suzanne Chiavrani. Okay, I apologize. I may not have gotten your name correct.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of New Jersey American Water, I'm Suzanne Chiavari, Vice President of Engineering. I'd like to thank the Council for holding this hearing, soliciting comments from the public. It's a very important issue for the industry, and it's very good to get the feedback. Can you hear me okay? No? Okay. Is that better? Okay. Our primary goals as water and wastewater utilities are to protect public health and ensure service continuity. Service reliability has been and will always be one of our key parameters in the planning and design of all water and wastewater systems. Water utility customers generally do not lose service during storm events because of our system designs. They're designed to provide continuous service under a wide range of events. We build water distribution storage tanks to provide buffers. We install standby power capabilities that power critical facilities should we lose utility power. We build critical assets above 100-year flood elevations, and or we add flood protection for the older facilities that are flood prone or flood at risk. Nonetheless, what we've learned recently is that weather patterns are combining with the issue of aging infrastructure, and that's causing us to reevaluate our traditional planning approach and our traditional design criteria. The design standards that we have used look at supplies, look at treatment plants, pump stations, and tanks, all taken together to achieve a level of zero service outages. The so-called new norm has led us to look beyond traditional reliability and emergency planning into a world that needs the speed of recovery and resiliency for much more widespread events. This is an action that we're taking at New Jersey American because of what we endured through Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Irene. We're reevaluating our design standards and our planning standards, and I encourage every utility to do that, whether they were impacted directly for those hurricanes or not. I'm going to address 8 key learning points that I'd like to share with the Council from our recent storm events and our after-action learning. And those are around resources, asset management, planning and risk assessment, updating planning and design criteria, the need for communications, and the need for funding options. So let me start with the first key learning point for us. New Jersey American Water is a subsidiary of American Water. So we bring a tremendous amount of resources to the table. over 7,000 employees across the country, 850 in New Jersey alone. During the recent storm events, we were able to leverage all of that knowledge, our key vendor relationships, our ability to get materials here quickly, relationships with contractors. Those were all key to having this wide network of resources that really helped us respond very quickly to the various storm events. And I would encourage the state agencies to think about how we can help utilities of all sizes develop this network, whether it's developing a template for an inter-utility agreement similar to what the power industry uses, where they're very visible. They're bringing crews from out of state to make repairs. We also encourage state agencies to work with utilities to establish a priority system with electric utilities for power restoration. The loss of power is very critical to us, and the restoration of power is very critical to us. So developing a priority system with electric utilities is very crucial. We would also encourage state agencies to look at establishing a bottled water distribution network. You can design your systems for zero outages, but occasionally something happens and you need to be able to move bottled water around. And we've done that ourselves very successfully, but obviously we're not a supermarket or a food and beverage industry, so bottled water industry. So any help with that would be greatly appreciated. I also encourage DEP to continue to maintain and update the asset information that was gathered during Hurricane Sandy. I know that we provided quite a lot of information on generators, power accounts, what have you, so we need to keep all that information up to date. Michelle spoke about a regional approach, and we absolutely endorse that, working through the county OEMs. We found that to be very successful in Monmouth and Ocean County. We also need to take care of our workers, not just all of the pipes and pumps and electrical gear, but we need to take care of our workers. And we found that, you know, families of utility workers have a very significant burden. The workers are relied on to respond immediately to events. They're often working long hours away from home. Typically, they may have flooding at their own house. They may have trees come down. We had trees come down on employees' cars. And the employee is trying to juggle many, many different things. So a family resource center or a hotline to help deal with all of those issues would be greatly appreciated as well. The other areas I will just touch very briefly on, and then we'll provide written comments. We talked earlier about, or a number of speakers talked about asset management systems. And basically, the better you're prepared, the better the outcome. Planning and risk assessments are critical. Reassessing our planning criteria are critical. Communication is critical. Your customers deserve to know what's going on. We found that through using social media, Twitter, Facebook, that helps get the customer information that they need, along with call centers. Data communication, also very critical. We're very reliant on cell networks and power to move data around. So that's another issue to take a look at. I see my 1-minute warning, so I will wrap it up. I will submit the remainder of comments. Two last things on the area of funding. We learned that not only water but wastewater is a critical asset in any of these emergency events, and the resiliency of the wastewater systems are equally as important to the water systems. And when we look at the ASC report card, the wastewater systems get a lower grade than the water systems, and we really need to spur investment for wastewater utilities. I would encourage DEP to petition EPA to make state revolving loan funds available to investor-owned wastewater utilities, as well as what the program has for drinking water. We also encourage DEP to work with BPU to expand the DISC program, the Distribution System Improvement Charge program, for water infrastructure to the wastewater sector as well. You heard Michelle talk about reducing I&I and how that plays into resiliency. And with that, I will thank you for the opportunity to address the council this morning.
Manuel Lazarov, Chris Len,
Thank you. I'm Chris Len. I'm the staff attorney for Hackensack Riverkeeper and New York, New Jersey Baykeeper. Thank you for having this hearing today. And I would like to point out, first of all, that the lack of spending on New Jersey's stormwater infrastructure leaves New Jersey in a state of emergency on days when there's not a huge superstorm. And it's something that causes a great deal of injury to our state every day, or not every day, but most days of the year, many days of the year. And it compounds it when we have a big weather event like we had with Sandy or with Irene. Stormwater infrastructure in our state has badly deteriorated. Every year, according to the EPA, 23 billion gallons of raw sewage go into New Jersey waters from combined sewer overflows. That is without a storm. Our permit in New Jersey has no monitoring requirements. It has no technology-based effluent limits. It has no water quality-based effluent limits. And there's no public notice of overflows. And so all of that goes into our water every year, and we don't know when our water is safe to swim in and when it is not. New Jersey has the United States' greatest need for stormwater management infrastructure, more than 2.5 times the second state in terms of need in actual dollars. So despite being the 47th largest state in the union, we have the #1 infrastructure for stormwater requirements in the union by 2.5 times. We have the second greatest need in actual dollars for CSO correction. And that's, I imagine, behind New York, which New York City alone is gigantic as compared to our state, and yet we have the second biggest problem in the nation. We have the third worst need for decentralized wastewater treatment, the fourth in secondary and advanced wastewater treatment, the fourth in non-point source pollution control needs, which again I think is remarkable given the size of our state, that a state like New Jersey has a greater need than a state like Nebraska. The key is, and I think has always been, for New Jersey to start. We are always putting things off. We have a regulatory scheme that makes it cheaper to do nothing than it does to start taking steps. We have a combined sewer overflow permit that requires basically nothing of combined sewer operators. And it has simply been cheaper in many cases for municipalities, regulated entities, and the state to simply not start. Portland, Oregon, where I went to law school, you might know it as a place that rains quite a bit. I was just there. It rained the whole time. And they have combined sewer overflows in Portland. And in 1991, they began a plan to get rid of them. And over 20 years, they built large gray infrastructure projects. And last year, they had no overflows, not one, because in 1991, they started. And here in 2013, we're hoping that the DEP starts with its addressing its combined sewer overflow problem by addressing or starting individual permits that have real measures in them. But so far, that hasn't happened. By the end of the week, maybe we'll have our first. It's not just an absence of regulation, though, that causes these things, or really rather putting in a presence of regulation won't simply fix them. We have to allow the people of New Jersey to be rational economic actors so that they can address these problems in a market-efficient way. You don't fix problems that it doesn't cost you anything to have, but it does cost you something to fix. We need to incentivize measures to address these problems. One of the great developments that has occurred since Portland began its project, and that you can see most clearly in New York City and probably Philadelphia, is that green infrastructure offers a lot of promise to do these things more cheaply. New York City had a treatment facility that it needed to build that it estimated would cost over $10 billion. And by thinking outside of normal constraints, coming up with new ideas, they found that they could get equal or better wastewater treatment for $1.5 billion. And that is something, again, that they have started to do. In New Jersey, though, you don't, even though green infrastructure is so inexpensive as opposed to large gray infrastructure facilities, you don't do them because why spend a small amount of money on green infrastructure if you don't spend any money at all? And so what New Jersey should do to begin the process of developing green infrastructure that will make events like Sandy less severe and make our day-to-day problems with combined sewer overflows diminish, is that they should incentivize green infrastructure by making it cheaper, but more importantly perhaps, shift the costs that have been externalized from the people who produce stormwater and put it into our rivers, into our wastewater treatment plants, back to the people who produce the stormwater. And there has been some promising legislation introduced in the New Jersey State House. One is that Assemblyman Eustace has introduced a bill that would give tax credits for developing stormwater capture systems. That would be helpful. Another is that Senator Smith has introduced a bill that would create a stormwater utility. And in that instance, if a municipality were to create a stormwater utility under Senator Smith's bill, they would then be able to give a cost signal to people with large parking lots that could have relatively small steps to reduce the amount of flow that goes off of those parking lots. Green infrastructure, relatively inexpensive. And I think one of the biggest problems that we have is that there's just a lack of notification when there is a combined sewer overflow. Right now, you don't know if it's safe to go swimming in my bodies of water because if there's a combined sewer overflow, you don't know when it happened necessarily or for how long it lasts. There's a beach in Perth Amboy that has 3 or 4 CSO outfalls on it, and between it's sand. That is not safe, particularly on days when there's an overflow, and people should be made aware of that. So we think that the best way to address problems like Sandy and Irene is to begin addressing the problems like what happens when it rains later this week. And New Jersey and DEP can start doing that now. Thank you.
Bridget McKenna, Tony McDonald, Audrey Miller, John Miller, Meisha Mitchell, Dennis Palmer, Glenn Petrosky, David Pringle, Richard Rizzoldi, Sari Rothrock, John Ratola, David Shattle, Captain Bill Sheehan, Deborah Schuff, Emad Sidham, Carol Storms, Jeff Tittle, Steve Traynor, Heathy Safford,
Good morning. I'm Heather Safford, and I'm a staff scientist with Clean Ocean Action, who represents over 135 organizations as well as concerned businesses and citizens. And I want to thank you again for the opportunity to testify on proving the resilience of our water infrastructure. Not only has the New Jersey water infrastructure been subject to extreme storms, it had also been subject to inadequate planning and financing to protect, maintain, and upgrade these systems. As Chris said, we have all these CSO problems. We have aging infrastructure, leaking, where we have both, infiltrating groundwater into our sewer system and probably leaking drinking water and sewage as well. We pay a high cost for these problems, resulting in both poor water quality, wasting of water resources, and flooding impacts that need to be addressed. Hopefully the recent storms, as has been mentioned, will bring attention and support needed to improve these drinking, stormwater, and wastewater systems and their resiliency. To best encourage improved resiliency, we need to conduct hazard risk analysis in light of updated science on the risk posed by flooding, storm surge, and as well as predicted sea level rise, which is now greater than was previously realized only a year ago. As part of this risk assessment, New Jersey needs to work together with municipalities, counties, utilities, and companies to map out sewer, drinking water, and stormwater lines that have not been previously electronically mapped into DEP-GIS databases. These need to be ground truth where necessary. This has been a major problem in trying to find out about what the status has been with these infrastructure problems after the storm. And it's also really important that we know the age and status of these lines and this be documented. The mapping should be shared and be put in place for updating. A plan needs to be put in place for updating. These tools will prove useful for identifying and assessing infrastructure, vulnerabilities, and problems going forward where these tools are already in place. They did help time in terms of reducing time required to communicate issues and concern. But we also still need, as been mentioned today, a clear and straightforward communication plan to be put in place so that people know who to be contacting during emergencies, whether power outages exist or not. And this information all needs to be publicly available. Although some of the major problems in sewage releases in response to Sandy were reported, it has been very challenging to get specific information on more minor but serious infrastructure problems. This information is vital to warn the public on potential health and flooding risks and to ensure that repairs are made. We've been hearing from citizens and others, about continued problems with stormwater and sewer line problems in certain communities, and we've been hearing it through news stories. So it's very helpful today to have this meeting and to get some more updated information from DEP. But we need more information to the public in a more timely fashion, following emergency events. There's also been concerns, we understand that most of the ocean dischargers did stay online during the storm. However, it looked like some of the facilities were flooded based on some of the storm surge maps produced, but we still need to get more information about the status of these facilities. So it's technical standards need to be developed and updated, as mentioned previously, and we also need the staff resources to evaluate and ensure these are met going forward. Again, we're very concerned about the age of some of these systems. We heard at the Middlesex Utilities Authority that they actually had to find retired engineers to come in and help with some of the systems because some of the technologies were so old that the engineers were not familiar with how to fix them. And so this is a serious problem that really needs to be addressed. And it's important that pump stations, lines, and discharge pipes are flood-proofed, as DEP mentioned today, and that a variety of strategies should be evaluated to determine what's most protective of our facilities as well as what's most protective in the environmental area they're in. To facilitate resource sharing, we need to investigate and provide financial incentives to encourage sharing and develop of MOUs between counties and towns of inspection and maintenance tools and equipment. We have heard that there has been some counties do have resources but are not able to share because of financial issues. To provide for the long-term sustainability of water infrastructure operation, the state needs to release a protective water supply plan, invest in repairing and upgrading infrastructure as mentioned, support long-term funding mechanisms to support water infrastructure investment, including beginning conversations about stormwater utilities so that we can have an environmentally protective stormwater
planning process in place. We need to increase water conservation, beneficial reuse of water, as well as update and strengthen our stormwater and coastal zone regulations. We also need to restore funding in our natural infrastructure. Green acres, blue acres, and farmland preservations all need to be more funding. We need to create tax incentives to encourage voluntary adoption of green infrastructure techniques like rain barrel cisterns and green roofs. We need to develop special area management plans for Barnegat Bay and the coast that have meaningful participation by the public and them. We've been very disappointed with this process so far, and we hope that these efforts can be revitalized in a way that has meaningful results. And finally, as mentioned previously, we need to strengthen and enforce NEPDES permits, which are not allowed to degrade water quality by law, including the individual permits for CSOs. So again, improving the status is critical for water conservation, protecting our public health, reducing flooding, and improving water quality, all of which, improves our quality of living and our economy. And we need to, invest in green infrastructure and protect our natural infrastructure. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to present this testimony today, and more importantly, for recognizing the opportunity to increase the resiliency of our built infrastructure through a green infrastructure approach. My name is Martin McHugh. I'm the representative for the Conservation Fund in New Jersey, but I'm also a resident of Manasquan, New Jersey, so I saw firsthand through the Superstorm Sandy the need for a green infrastructure approach going forward. The Conservation Fund is a national land trust and sustainability nonprofit out of Arlington, Virginia. And in the last 30 years, the Conservation Fund has protected over 7 million acres of land and water in all 50 states, including 4,600 acres in New Jersey. These range from the park down the street to historic battlefields, wild areas and destinations of all kinds, including the Flight 93 Memorial, and just last month, the first monument for the state of Delaware. The Conservation Fund is chartered under the dual mission of protecting our nation's land and water resources and promoting sustainable economic development. So in addition to land preservation, the Conservation Fund endorses a balanced approach for smarter land use planning and sustainable development to design our built assets so they're in concert with our natural assets. And we call this strategic conservation process the green infrastructure approach. Our green infrastructure approach is not just windmills, it's not solar panels or rain gardens, it's a process. It's a process that guides the construction of built or gray infrastructure, if you will, our homes, our businesses, our roadways, and of course our utilities, which we're here talking about today, together with the restoration of our green infrastructure, our waterways, our wetlands, our parks and forests, our beaches and dunes. Green infrastructure is a process that can be undertaken at state, regional, community, or even watershed levels. And it's a process that educates participants on the links between our built and green infrastructure, and it shows how these connections provide benefits or services to our built assets. By analyzing these connections, we can identify opportunities for designing well-integrated systems to increase the function and value of both the built and the natural assets. And it's clear that restoring our natural assets increases their capacity to protect our built infrastructure. Restoration increases resiliency. It's a necessity for sustainable ecological systems, for more vibrant communities, and also for a healthy economy. And there's no better example of the value and importance of a healthy, high-functioning network of green infrastructure than what happened after Superstorm Sandy and during the storm. So since Superstorm Sandy, the Conservation Fund has been working in a number of New Jersey coastal communities to provide information on the benefits of green infrastructure and for the rebuilding process to truly restore the shore and build back more resilient communities. We do this with strategic partners such as Monmouth University and Dewberry Engineers, and we're lining up funding for green infrastructure planning and identifying green infrastructure demonstration projects along the coast. Our national MOU, Memorandum of Understanding with the Army Corps of Engineers, provides for a cooperative approach to promote green infrastructure for flood protection, stormwater mitigation, and sustainable development. And through this MOU, days after the storm, I led tours of impacted coastal areas for Lieutenant General Bostic, who is the commander of the Army Corps of Engineers, and other officers, and Assistant Commissioner Kaczynski was there as well. And we began a dialogue on green infrastructure for the coastal rebuild on those days. The Conservation Fund has worked with numerous other partners, from environmental and conservation groups to cities, counties, major utilities, and industry leaders to undertake green infrastructure planning and implement green infrastructure assessments throughout the country. We're currently completing green infrastructure plans in Chicago, in Houston, in Los Angeles, and you want to talk about a hardscape, infrastructure area. Los Angeles was a big challenge. Following the Mississippi River floods of 2010, the Conservation Fund completed a green infrastructure assessment for Nashville and Davidson County, Tennessee, with a primary focus on flood control and flood water retention. I have a copy of that plan up here if you'd like to see it at some point, anybody in the room afterwards. In terms of water utilities, the Conservation Fund partnered with the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District on its Green Seams programs. Green Seams was established through the green infrastructure process there to address problems associated with Milwaukee's combined sewer overflow system. A key component of Green Seams is to identify lands containing critical hydric soils, then work to preserve and restore those lands for water management and retention. The green infrastructure plan there covered 440 square miles, encompassing 4 watersheds, 4 counties, 28 municipalities, and 1.1 million customers. It resulted in over 2,200 acres of preserved land, 380 acres restored, including 14 miles of stream buffer, and it effectively removed thousands of gallons of water from the sewer, hundreds of thousands of gallons of water from the sewer system, and reduced future flood risks, decreased flood management costs, improved wildlife habitat, property values, and overall quality of life. There's no doubt that a green infrastructure approach can be applied to improve the performance and resilience of our water infrastructure in New Jersey, while improving our water quality at the same time. And as I stated at the outset, the Conservation Fund is working hard with partners in New Jersey to provide the framework and the tools for a coastal rebuild that directly engages partners in the plans for more resilient communities. It's a community-based, community-driven process that incorporates input across all stakeholder groups to retain community character, which the governor is concerned about. The process also educates partners and builds champions for the green infrastructure plans so that they do not sit on the shelf. The Conservation Fund intends to provide written testimony beyond this introductory statement that I'm giving today to respond directly to the topics outlined in your request for testimony. But in closing, Bullet 6 of the request asks how DEP can encourage the use of green infrastructure to protect water quality and improve water infrastructure resiliency. The Conservation Fund would respectfully suggest that DEP review the projects that we have completed at our website. It's at www.conservationfund.org. The Conservation Fund is also available at the Department's convenience to meet with any of the Department programs or staff to show them how to do this. And lastly, since the late 90s, we have been training partners, state agency, environmental agency partners, federal agency staff, state county planners, municipalities, biologists, developers, and NGOs in the green infrastructure approach. So in addition to holding workshops around the country, we provide green infrastructure courses at the National Conservation Training Center in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. And the next course will be offered on May 20th and 24th. And you can find a link to the register for that on our website. We work with state agencies on registration fees. As we know, as I know especially, having worked here for 25 years, the state's strapped for training and funding, so we'll work with you to register anybody who wants to come. So thank you for your time and commitment to this. We really appreciate it.
Is there anybody else who would like to testify? Thank you. We heard some really great information today. The process is that we now will go back as a council digest the information. We'll receive a copy of the transcript. We'll receive copies of all of the written testimony. If anybody would like to supplement, they're welcome to do so within the next 30 days. And then we will prepare a written report to the Commissioner. Our written report will appear on the Clean Water Council website. Thank you so much for everything, especially the interesting comments on green infrastructure. I will tell you that had we held our originally planned a public hearing in November of 2012, that would have been our topic, and perhaps that will be the source of a future topic for the Clean Water Council. I thank you, and we can now consider this hearing officially closed.
Yes, we have 3 different things here. You might have gotten copies of some of it.